What's going on, guys, and welcome to today's video. And today we've got a fresh Gladiator out of the shop for the first time in a really long time. And it's kind of a special Gladiator because it's a Mojave with a lift, and no Mopar doesn't make a lift. And if you guys know, I'm a massive advocate for the Mopar lifts, obviously, but they do not have one for the Mojave. So that's what we are looking at today. This is a 2022 Jeep Gladiator Mojave, and if you guys don't know about these things, they've got really awesome factory Fox remote reservoir shocks, hydraulic bump stops. They're just a really cool kind of go fast desert Gladiator. Now, like I said, Mopar does not have a lift for these because of the special suspension that's already on these things. Now, you wouldn't just want to take it off because of those awesome shocks, the unique springs, all of the stuff that makes a Mojave special would kind of get removed if you lifted one. And that's where AEV comes in. They've got a spacer lift that reuses most of the factory stuff, but gets you a little bit taller. Now, I'll talk more about the lift and all of the specific parts and pieces once we get on the road and drive this thing, but I thought we'd at least walk around this real quick before we got on the road. Now, we kept this one relatively simple. Like I said, we've got the 2-inch spacer AEV lift specific for the Mojave. We do have the 392 beadlock capable wheels on this thing off of a Wrangler, wrapped in some 37-inch BFG KO2s, which, as you guys know, are always a good looking choice. But other than that, it is a stock Mojave. And I was pretty excited to see this thing because I have not personally got to install one of these lifts, and I don't know how well you guys can see, but this thing does sit pretty darn level on the ground with just the lift. There's no other leveling kit up front. It is just the lift installed per the instructions, and the thing sits really level. So guys, like I said, let's jump in this thing, let's go drive it and talk about why we don't have a Mopar lift on this, why we've got an aftermarket lift, and why that's okay in this situation. All right, guys, so I'm kind of excited to drive this one because if you've watched the channel for any amount of time, you know how much of a massive advocate I am of the Mopar lift. You know, Mopar lift or bust. You know, I'm always praising the Mopar lift for smooth riding and all of that. But Mopar does not offer a lift for the Mojave Gladiator. And, you know, typically, you wouldn't want to really lift it. It's a go fast desert runner, but AEV came out with a really nicely thought out spacer lift for the Mojave. Now, why you'd want a spacer lift versus a spring lift? With the Mojave, you've got these special reservoir shocks, you've got these special springs, you've got the hydraulic bump stops. And if you were just removing all of that to do a lift, gosh, it would kind of be pointless to get the Mojave since, again, it comes with all of the awesome stuff. Now, the shocks on the Mojave, like I said, are Fox Racing reservoir shocks. They are about $2,000 a piece to replace. So buying an aftermarket lift with lesser shocks is not a very cool option. So what AEV came up with was a spacer lift. We've got some nice polyurethane style spacers or isolators that replace the factory rubber isolators on top of the springs, front and rear. It has the factory locating pins. They fit really nicely. It also comes with bump stop extensions for the front and the rear, so your hydraulic bump stops in the front still work and everything's where it needs to go. And the big thing is the shock extensions. Now, like we said, you do not want to get rid of your awesome factory shocks in a Mojave, so they come with some, again, very nice shock extensions. They bolt onto the factory shock mount, and then the shock bolts to that bracket. Now, one thing really cool, this was the first time I've ever installed one of these, is the quality of the hardware, the quality of the bracketry. It looks OEM. That bracket looks factory paint. The bolts have the same coating. To the untrained eye looking under this thing right now, you'd never know it has a lift on it, or aftermarket parts, I guess I should say. Now, what I was interested to get it out and drive it and feel this thing on the road. Unfortunately, it's a crazy windy Kansas day, but this thing should basically ride completely stock. The factory springs, the factory shocks, The Jeep is just 2 inches raised up with some spacers, and then our shocks are also extended. So the Jeep should drive no different. Obviously, with a little bit bigger tire, we've got 37's on this thing versus the factory 33's. It's gonna be a little more Jeep-like, I guess, if you will. I don't know if I wanna say more wandery, but it's going to drive like a lifted vehicle, and a lot of that, like I said, is just the big tires. Now, one thing I did add to this lift that it does not come with, or it doesn't come with any provisions, is any way to change the front caster. The Mopar lift comes with longer front lower control arms that will extend the lower control arms, obviously, and add caster, because when you lift a solid axle vehicle, you lose caster, they drive poorly. So I ordered 2 Mopar lift kit lower control arms, which then extended the lower control arms and added the caster just like a factory Mopar lift would, since these are the Mopar lift lower control arms. So that's the only critique, I guess, that I'd have for the lift, or the only thing I would be adding if I was buying this same lift for my Mojave, is the factory Mopar lower control arms. Now, driving this thing, it drives very nice, very smooth. These shocks are awesome. Again, don't get rid of them for an aftermarket lift. It drives very comfortably. Again, even up on 37's, it's a very windy day, but I'm driving down the road very straight, one hand on the wheel, talking to you guys with no, white knuckle driving. It drives great. Again, another thing it does have with the AEV kit is front and rear extended sway bar links, and they aren't cheap, cheesy sway bar links. They are nice rubber bushing on one end and a ball joint style on the other, just like the Mopar factory links. It's honestly really, really nice quality stuff. And I don't feel bad installing it on a brand new Mojave, because again, it's quality stuff, and I would run it on my own personal vehicle if I needed to lift up my Mojave. So I don't know. Like I said, I was excited. I've done a few Mojaves before where I've put leveling kits or what have you on them, and this kit was not available when those Mojaves were done. So I was always kind of interested to get my hands on a, set or a lift for one of these, to get it bolted on, see the quality, and it's AEV, you know the name, it's quality stuff. Now we'll jump back onto the highway here. And it's going to accelerate just fine. We're on 37's, but we have the 8-speed transmission. It's a beast, you guys know. Yes, you do feel a slight power difference versus the 33's, but in a short amount of time, I'm not even to the highway yet, and I'm already up to 60 miles an hour, and I'm not just putting my foot down on the floor. It just goes fine. That 8-speed transmission, again, you guys have heard me just praise that thing too. It's a beast, no matter what it's behind, a 4-cylinder, a V8, a Hellcat, it does work, and it works great. But back to the Mojave, back to an AEV 2-inch spacer lift. I don't know, I would be bolting it on mine if I wanted to lift it up. It's got everything it needs. We've got bump stop extensions, we've got sway bar end link extensions, we've got shock extensions. It all works well. The only fitment issue I had was the front shock extensions. They were a teeny bit narrow. I had to kind of spread them open to get them to fit around the factory shock bracket. Once I had them opened, everything bolted down fine. So other than that weird kind of fitment issue that was on both sides, there was no issue. And again, it took me just a few minutes to figure out, hey, I need to spread this open and make this thing work. So guys, it has been a really long time since we've had a Gladiator out of the shop, lifted up, modified. That's why I wanted to bring you guys along. And this one kind of being special since we weren't doing a Mopar lift. Oh no, I know. Like I said, I praise the Mopar lifts, but in this case, Mopar does not make a lift. This is probably one of your only really good options for a affordable lift that still uses all of the cool factory Mojave fast desert cool stuff. So I don't know, I endorse it. I would put it on mine, and if you've been looking at it for yours, I would definitely say give it a try. But get out to your dealer and order a set of the lower control arms that are extended so you can fix your caster. The Jeep will drive great, and you'll have a taller Mojave than all the other guys out there. And in the Jeep world, That's what it's all about, right? Being a little bit taller than the guy next to you at the stoplight, and probably on the trail, more importantly. So guys, thanks for coming along with another fresh out of the shop Jeep. And guys, as always, thanks for watching, and we'll catch you guys next time.